Team Go Rocket holds the keys to the single best Pokemon in the entirety of Pokemon Go. And most of them are only available once in a long while. So catching them when they're out is extremely important. And to do that, you'll need to know what they are and exactly how to get them, because it can be a little bit tricky. Like with the little homie, Shadow Charmander, which was released way back in July of 2019 with the first ever initial wave of Shadow Pokemon. And it's been available plenty of times since, giving trainers like myself a lot of opportunities to get a good IV one, which I think I still don't have. I'm kind of slacking. But I need to get one, and you'll want to get one too when it's available, because Shadow Charizard ranks 70th in the Great League and 31st in the Ultra League, making it a decently viable option to battle with, although the regular non-Shadow version of Charizard does technically rank higher in the GBL. But where it really shines is as a Fire-type raid boss counter and in the Team Go Rocket leaders. Shadow Charizard is a top 10 fire type in Pokemon Go, and one that is much more accessible because Charmander spawns a lot in the wild and is a part of events, so it's really easy to get XL candies and candies to power up this very meta-relevant Pokemon. And you can catch this beast as a Shadow Shiny as well, which is one of the coolest in the entire game. Shadow Shiny Charmander was released back during the Battle Week event of 2022, which also happened to be the first ever wave of Shadow Shiny Pokemon. And it was last available in the Team Go Rocket leaders in November of 2022, but it might be easier to get in the near future. I have gotten lucky several times with Shadow Shiny Charmander, and I think I do have one or two Shadow Shiny Charizards. Really happy with that. Those were beast moments.
Oh my oh my god. Dude, yes! One of the last opportunities to get this.
Are you serious?
Don't you have two?
Yeah, but I've done 4 million.
Oh my
Oh
god.
my lord.
Now, why will it be more easier to get in the future? A recent Pokemon Go update has allowed regular grunts to have Shadow Shiny Pokemon as well, instead of just the team leaders. It seems like after a Shadow Shiny has been in the team leader rotation several times, it will move to the grunts to become easier and more accessible to find. So definitely keep an eye out for when the day Shadow Charmander is available again, because it is worth catching. This next Pokemon ranks as the #1 Pokemon overall in the entire game Pokemon Go, Shadow Mewtwo. It's the reason why myself and countless others have saved Super Rocket radars to catch more of this specific Pokemon, which is how I have 6 of them, by the way. My favorite and best in-game decision ever. What makes Shadow Mewtwo so good is its sheer amount of punch, specifically its DPS and TDO. DPS stands for damage per second, and TDO stands for total damage output. Basically how hard a Pokemon hits, and Shadow Mewtwo hits hard. It actually hits harder than pretty much every single Pokemon currently available in Pokemon Go, and most Pokemon that will eventually come out in Pokemon Go. Released and unreleased, it's a GOAT. It's really only out-damaged by Mega Mewtwo, and not by much. Shadow Mewtwo does more damage than all other Megas, Legendaries, Primals. It is simply a monster in both raids and in PvP. As a Psychic type, it is the best non-Mega you can ever have. And the thing that makes this Pokemon so impressive and so useful is the fact that it can learn a ton of different moves, like Thunderbolt, Shadow Ball, Ice Beam, Flamethrower. It can be molded into a very versatile Pokemon to take on a lot of different kinds of Pokemon. And Shadow Mewtwo is also a freaking monster in PvP, ranking 9th overall in the Masters League. And although I and many other trainers have several of this amazing Pokemon, it might not be that easy to get in the future, which makes it super important to stay up to date on when this is happening in Pokemon Go, when it's releasing again. So make sure to subscribe here to the channel if you haven't already, because I stay updated on the best, most up-to-date Pokemon Go news and stuff. To get it, you're gonna need to battle the Team Go Rocket leader Giovanni when Shadow Mewtwo is being held captive by him, which has technically only ever happened 3 times, once during Pokemon Go Fest 2020, which had boosted IVs, which was amazing.
Yes, dude. It looks so good. Like, I don't want to catch it. Shadow Mewtwo, 1776 CP. Okay, it's all right. It's all right. It's not bad. It's not bad.
Players who got to catch that Shadow Mewtwo absolutely cashed out, which I did. Shadow Pinsir is up next, and another one that's worth hunting for several reasons. My favorite reason being, it could be shiny. And it's my dream to catch a Shadow Shiny and purify it into a Shundo, which would be particularly useful for Pinsir because it does have a Mega. And in Pokemon Go, you cannot Mega Evolve Shadow Pokemon, but you can with purified ones. So a purified Shundo Pinsir would go freaking hard whenever it's released. It's not out yet. But even as a Shadow, Pinsir ranks as the #1 non-Mega bug type in Pokemon Go, making it a Pokemon that, like, honestly, you probably don't want to purify, even if the IVs would make it 100%. Shadow Pinsir was released to Team Go Rocket back in February of 2020, and was released shiny, actually, Shadow Shiny at the same time, which is cool. And the last time that it was available was actually in the Jesse and James encounters back in October of 2021. It's been a really long time. It's been a long time since we saw Jesse and James in Pokemon Go 2. What happened to them? These two haven't been back in forever, so if you got a Shadow Shiny from them, it's pretty sick. I I did not. Shadow Mudkip is one of Pokemon GO's most useful Pokemon. It's useful in all Go Battle Leagues, ranking 10th in the Great League, 11th in the Ultra League, and 50th in Masters League. Well, Shadow Swampert, its evolution. And as a raid boss counter, it is currently the #1 non-mega, non-legendary water type in all of Pokemon GO. And also ranks as a top 10 ground type. Like Pinsir, Swampert also has a mega form, which is actually currently the #1 overall water and ground type in the game. It's a really good mega. So purifying a Shadow Mudkip that makes it 100% IVs is technically kind of a good strategy, but it's also really useful to keep as a Shadow. The Shadow, by the way, released actually a really long time ago, back in July of 2019, and the Shadow Shiny version still has not been released yet, and I'd predict we see it this year, because this thing has been around forever. Also important to know that if you're watching this video in April of 2023, Shadow Mudkip is currently available in the Team Go Rocket Grunts with the dialogue, "These waters are treacherous." Happy hunting. Next is a Pokemon that will be very hard to get in the future. Shadow Zapdos. Since there are so many Shadow Legendary Pokemon that still don't have their Shadows released, the likelihood of a Legendary like Zapdos coming back to the Giovanni encounters is super low. Also, it's already been released 4 times, once during GoFest 2020 with boosted IVs. So I doubt we're gonna see it back anytime soon, but if we do, it is definitely worth the Super Rocket radar. Shadow Zapdos ranks 44th in the Masters League and is currently a top 5 electric type in Pokemon GO, which are super useful because of the sheer amount of flying type raid bosses. Electric type Pokemon, 2 thumbs up. Definitely a massively useful Pokemon that I currently have not caught enough of, although I do technically have 3 Shadow Zapdos, but I haven't powered them up yet. And speaking of electric types, Shadow Magnemite is another great and more budget-friendly electric type in Pokemon GO. And unlike Zapdos, it can actually be Shadow Shiny. Plus, is way easier to get XL candies and candies for, which is important because its evolution, Magnezone, maxes out at 3,623 CP, which isn't too high, but definitely requires some XL candies. Shadow Magnemite was released back in November of 2019 during the Team Go Rocket Leaders Disruption event, and released Shadow Shiny in the Team Leaders during the Takeover event of February 2023, making this one of the newest and most useful Shadow Shinies in the entire game. But it's not that easy to get. It's only ever been available 3 times and was recently released Shiny, so it might be a while until we get it back into Pokemon GO. Or it might be released in the Team Go Rocket Grunts sooner, which would be fantastic. Now we've got easily one of Pokemon GO's most exclusive Pokemon in the entire game. Shadow Lugia. This is because this isn't any regular Shadow Legendary. It's an Apex Shadow. Well, technically it's both, but when looking in my collection, I only have the Apex Shadow because I didn't catch Shadow Lugia. I think I skipped that one, which kind of sucks, but I was probably doing that to save the Super Rocket radar to catch more Shadow Mewtwo, so I do not regret that decision. Shadow Lugia was released back in November of 2021 during the Looming Shadows Returns event. Then the incredibly exclusive Apex Shadow Lugia was released during the Masterwork research that players got from playing the Johto Tour of 2022. This event was the only way to get Apex Shadow Lugia, and honestly, I don't know if it's ever gonna come back, and if it does, it's probably gonna be a long time. So if you have one, consider yourself lucky. It took me literal months to catch mine. Now, is this incredibly exclusive Pokemon even good in game? As a Psychic or Flying type, honestly, not really. But Shadow Lugia does rank an incredible 6th overall in the Masters League, which makes it hugely useful for PvP people. Although the non-Shadow Lugia is technically #1 overall, so that's kind of a better one, but the Shadow one is still great, and definitely worth catching whenever it comes back. And those are some of Pokemon GO's most important Shadow Pokemon to never skip out on. Hope you enjoyed the video, hope you found it helpful, subscribe if you did, see you in the next one!